Let's start out with some of the key concepts for Domain 4. Our BCP, our Business Continuity Plan, is the long-term plan where we ensure that our business continues to operate even in a disaster event. This is the overarching plan I talked about. And this is also one of those places where you have to be that 3-year-old that says, what if, what if, what if? DR, or disaster recovery, are all things we have that can help us recover after a disaster has happened. And disasters are normally categorized in natural, environmental, or man-made. Very simple, natural could be an earthquake. Environmental should not be confused with something from nature. It's stuff in our environment. That can be a water pipe that breaks and leaks into our server room, or a server that catches on fire. It's something in our environment. And then finally, man-made, either on purpose or not. Some human does something that has an adverse effect on us. Collusion is an agreement between 2 or more people to subvert the security of a system. It does not have to be technical. It can just be Bob submitting a purchase order from his brother-in-law's company for $1 million. Jane is in on the deal, and since Jane signs the checks and approves them, she signs it, and they are in collusion. Because with the purchasing process and the check signing, we have that separation of duty that obviously can't eliminate it, but it can make it less likely to happen. The COOP, or the Continuity of Operations Plan, is another of the subplans we have in our BCP. How do we continue to operate during the disaster? This doesn't necessarily have to be full capacity, but how can we ensure that we're at least up to an acceptable level, we can deal with the customers we have, and do what we would normally do in a day-to-day operations? And a disaster can be really horrible. It can also be not really horrible. A disaster is really any event that can disrupt our normal system's operations. Here in Hawaii, it could be a hurricane. If people can't get to work, how do we continue to operate? That would obviously be natural. What if the water pipe bursts and our entire call center has been flooded? Or someone broke into the debark and stole our router? Any of those can be a disaster. We do not function as normal, and then would use the COOP to function during the disaster and use the DR plan to get back to normal operations. Luckily, on the system exam, every single abbreviation is spelled out. I've had students who've struggled with MTBF and MTTR. Mean time between failure makes a lot more sense. Even if you don't remember it, you can still logic your way through it. What's the average time between a failure? And it really is that simple. And then MTTR, or mean time to repair. How long will it take us to fix the failed system? Again, it makes sense. Mean time to repair. I've heard different people use RAID for either redundant array of independent or inexpensive disks. Know both the terms, I'm not sure which one they would use on the exam. I think the first one's the one I've always used because it makes more sense. They're independent disks. We really have no clue if they're inexpensive. Either way, it's just us clustering more disks together for some of these or all of them. We can get more reliability, we can get higher speed, and we can get fault tolerance. Which we get depends on our setup. And with RAID we can either use mirroring or striping. And here also it makes sense. Think of a mirror. Mirroring is complete duplication from one disk to another. Disk A has a mirror copy on disk B. And striping to some extent also makes sense. If you visualize 3 hard disks laid out next to each other, almost like a piece of paper, and you need write across them, it's in a stripe. You write the first 50 characters on disk 1, then the next 50 on disk 2, then the next 50 on disk 3, and since normally the limitation here is the hard drive, how fast they can write, splitting a data stream onto multiple hard drives makes it write faster.